worsened. Unable to reach Ki-joon physically, he spits on his face, jolting him back to consciousness. Desperate, Ki-joon uses his legs to reach the ceiling, flipping himself upside down to break free. Although he manages to escape, he falls painfully to the floor. Groaning but determined, Ki-joon recovers and helps Hyul escape as well. To make their way out, they must pass through a room full of sleeping thugs. They tiptoe silently, trying not to make any noise. However, the alarm on Ki-joon's wristwatch suddenly rings, waking one of the thugs. As the thug pursues them, the commotion wakes the others, and the duo is forced to flee in panic. They try to escape through surrounding buildings but find no viable routes. With no other choice, they turn back, only to find their path blocked by the thugs. Thinking quickly, they use a cart to scare the thugs, creating a diversion and making another desperate escape. Yang-chun chases them in a van, quickly gaining on them. Just as the van is about to catch up, Ki-joon and Hyul spot a police station and sprint toward it. The thugs stop their pursuit when the two reach the safety of the station. Inside, Ki-joon and Hyul urgently report the situation, explaining that girls are being held captive in an abandoned building. The officer on duty seems shocked and asks how he can help. However, when Ki-joon and Hyul urge him to act immediately, the officer insists they show ID first as part of protocol. Ki-joon explains that the thugs stole their wallets and phones. Frustrated, he raises his voice, demanding to know what could be more important than saving lives. The officer responds that following protocol ensures everyone's safety in the long run. As Ki-joon and Hyul prepare to leave in anger, the officer stops them. The officer pulls out a taser, warning them to comply. Ki-joon challenges the officer to shoot, and the officer does, leaving both of them unconscious. The next day at the university, Professor Yang receives a call from the police station and promptly travels there. Even Professor Yang is asked for identification, and after showing it, Ki-joon and Hyul are released into his custody. As they leave, the two urgently tell Professor Yang about the abducted girls. During the car ride to the abandoned building, Professor Yang shares a similar case he once encountered. He explains that a healthy woman typically produces 1 egg per month, but with certain drugs, she can produce up to 20 eggs. These eggs are then sold by brokers who connect infertile couples with donors for a fee. When they reach the building and search the rooms, they find it empty. The victims are no longer there. Professor Yang explains that this case requires proper handling and says he'll reach out to the Regional Investigation Unit, RIU. When asked when the investigation will begin, he admits it might take some time, as the RIU operates on its own schedule. Out of concern, Ki-joon suggests they search for the girls themselves, arguing that the thugs may not have taken them far. Despite their persistence, Professor Yang advises leaving the matter to the authorities. As a final request, Hyul asks Professor Yang to look up the plate number of the vehicle used by the thugs. Professor Yang contacts someone for help, but the plate number turns out to be unregistered. Disheartened, they return to the university. Later, while Ki-joon and Hyul are talking in the shower, their friend Jae-ho arrives to retrieve his jacket. However, he notices the bruises on their bodies, prompting concern. Ki-joon apologized, explaining that something happened, but Jae-ho tells them to just forget about it. However, Hyul suddenly recalls that Jae-ho's father works in law enforcement and asks if he knows someone at the Gangnam CCTV Center. Jae-ho nervously admits that his father knows someone but hesitates to give their name. Frustrated, Ki-joon and Hyul raise their voices, which startles Jae-ho into blurting out the name, Medusa, the commander who supervised their entrance exam. Ki-joon and Hyul immediately call Medusa. When she answers, Ki-joon introduces himself as one of the students who was under her supervision. Medusa directly asks what he wants, and Ki-joon explains that his friend is the victim of a hit-and-run in Gangnam involving an unregistered vehicle. Medusa warns that finding it will take days because they'll need to manually search through all the CCTV footage. Desperate, Ki-joon pleads with her, saying it's incredibly important and asking for her help just this once. Medusa eventually agrees, asking them to send her the details, including the time, location, and plate number. Overjoyed, Hyul and Ki-joon send the information immediately. The two thank her profusely before ending the call. The two best friends begin planning. They manage to acquire weapons by pretending they were sent by Professor Yang, and after getting what they need, they start rigorous training. Meanwhile, at the location where the victims are held, the thugs check on one of the girls and realize her condition is worsening. Yang-chun orders his men to harvest her organs, despite Yoon-young's desperate pleas to save the young girl. Her protests are met with brutal violence as she is kicked in the stomach and head. Ki-joon and Hyul continue to train hard over the next few days, eating plenty to build their strength. With each passing day, they grow stronger and more determined. Then they receive a call from Medusa. Medusa informs them that she has successfully located the vehicle using CCTV footage. She provides its exact location and destination, adding that another vehicle, likely used for clinic transport, had been following the unregistered van. Excited but anxious, the two immediately research the clinic and discover that the egg retrieval procedure is scheduled for 2 days later. Ki-joon hesitates, asking Hyul if he thinks they can really pull it off. Hyul laughs, teasing him for being scared, and Ki-joon tells him to shut up before laughing along. Despite their nerves, they reaffirm their determination to save the girls. The day has arrived. At H fertility clinic, an infertile couple consults with a doctor about Yoon-young as their egg donor. With a falsified profile of Yoon-young provided by the thugs, the couple is convinced to choose her. As the victims are transported to the clinic, Hyul and Ki-joon arrive first, giving them time to prepare. When the girls reach the clinic, they are quickly ushered inside. The victims are taken to the operation room while Ki-joon and Hyul ready themselves for the attack. In the parking lot, Gun-ho and 2 other men hear an approaching noise. Realizing it's Ki-joon and Hyul, Gun-ho bangs on the van to call the other thugs. Soon, the group gathers armed with bats. As the fight begins, Ki-joon quickly takes down the first attacker, followed by another, while Hyul also holds his ground. Despite being outnumbered, the two manage to defeat most of the thugs, though it's a struggle. During the chaos, Hyul clings to the side mirror of a car as one of the men tries to pull him away. Another thug strikes his hand with a bat, the impact fracturing it. Ki-joon uses a taser gun to disable 3 men. Determined despite his injury, Hyul continues fighting with only one functional hand, taking down the remaining thugs around him. After finishing his last opponent, Ki-joon nearly strikes Hyul, mistaking him for another thug. He stops just in time, but he's horrified when he sees Hyul's fractured hand. In his shock, he accidentally grabs it, causing Hyul to groan in pain. Ki-joon quickly apologizes. Noticing the missing tasers, Hyul asks Ki-joon about them. Ki-joon admits that they were damaged during the fight, which worries Hyul. Despite their injuries and the loss of their tasers, they decide to head up into the building before the thugs recover. As they search for the operating room, Ki-joon and Hyul approach a cleaning lady for directions. She informs them that it's on the 8th floor. Inside the elevator, Ki-joon complains about the pain in his nose, but as soon as the doors open, he is blindsided by Yang-chun, who punches him directly on the nose. Hyul is also attacked moments later. Ki-joon recovers and grabs Yang-chun by the ear, throwing him to the floor and kicking him. However, the leader blocks the attacks and fights back. After an intense exchange of blows, Hyul strikes Yang-chun on the head with a baton, causing him to bleed. The fight continues, and Ki-joon seizes an opportunity to push Yang-chun into a glass wall, shattering it and causing him to fall. Ki-joon attempts to handcuff Yang-chun, but the man evades capture and keeps fighting. Hyul joins in, trying to subdue him. Ki-joon manages to grab Yang-chun and slam him to the ground again, but the thug's boss refuses to stay down. Realizing they need to work together, Ki-joon and Hyul gang up on him. Overwhelmed, Yang-chun finally begins to falter. For a final blow, Ki-joon throws him to the ground one last time, successfully knocking him out. They quickly handcuff him and head straight to the operating room. Inside, the operation is moments away from starting. The two burst in just in time to save Yoon-young, who is already under anesthesia. Ki-joon carries her on his back. As they check on the other victims, they realize the situation is beyond their ability to handle alone. Reluctantly, they decide to call Professor Yang for help, knowing it may result in their expulsion. The police arrive shortly after, rescuing all the victims and ensuring their safety. The next day, back at the university, Professor Yang reassures Hyul and Ki-joon that they will have no regrets, even if they are held back a year due to expulsion. Professor Yang then enters the university president's office, and a meeting of the officers begins. During the meeting, a disagreement arises when some officers argue whether to expel Ki-joon and Hyul or give them another chance, given that they were able to save the lives of over 20 girls from a dangerous situation, even if it involved using some force. After the meeting, Professor Yang informs the two about the decision. Ki-joon and Hyul will not be expelled, but they will be held back a year and required to complete 500 hours of detention. The news is a relief, and they express their gratitude to Professor Yang as he leaves. The following day, Ki-joon and Hyul begin their detention hours when Yoon-young arrives to visit her saviors. Overcome with emotion, Yoon-young tearfully thanks and hugs them, showing how grateful she is for their help. Ki-joon then offers to give her a tour of the campus.